Last time I showed this, a fellow one of the founders of Home Depot, and his name is Bernie Marcus, and he said, nobody wants to work these days. Says nobody works, nobody gives a damn. Just give it to me, send me money. I don't want to work. I'm too lazy, I'm too fat, I'm too stupid. So I guess he's a little frustrated, with all the people today that it's a different world than the one he was certainly born and grew up in, you know. And so a couple of fellows kind of answered him, and one fellow says, "No one wants to work," says a guy who won't pay enough to attract employees. I went to Burger Kind and and offered them $1 for a Whopper. Okay, they said no. I guess no one wants to sell burgers anymore. Okay, and another fellow says, no one wants to work because life is non-fulfilling. There is no community or sense of immediate progress. Okay, yeah, I guess if they gave people $10,000 a week, they'd be fighting for a job at Home Depot, but what happens, some people get welfare or some other low income, and if they work, they just get a little over that. Like if let's just give a number. Let's say you make $1,000 by being on welfare, and by going to work you make 1,200 or 1,300 bucks. Well, you may not want to go to work because the 200 $300 difference, may not be enough incentive for you. So you would rather stay at home and make the most of your time in some other way, like something useful like playing games. And I guess that's something that's happening across the board today. Okay, I think there's a lot of internet activity, and yeah, a lot of people get distracted by that. They don't look for jobs, they don't go to work because it's not worth it. If on the other hand they gave them 2 times, 3 times, 4 times the salaries they're offering today, I think a lot of people would go out and get a job. But again, that's the status quo today to some degree. Here's another fellow says, you talked about AI, okay? Or have you talked about AI? AI should be able to automate tons of service jobs within a decade. So we're going to get rid of more people from the labor force and let the AIs even do a lot of the work we're doing today, assuming, they can get them running, all these robots running that well. Um, Okay, it says OpenAI already came out with things like ChatGPT and DALL-E 2. It's UBI or starvation for the lot of us. UBI meaning universal basic income, for those of you who are not familiar. That means you get a basic income and you stay at home. So again, they're kind of giving incentives for people not to work in many cases, especially the very low income. Why did they give them incomes at all? And the answer, I guess, to that is because otherwise they'd be breaking windows and burning tires in the streets. Crime would go up, etc. But if you give them some income, at least they say, well, rather than go to prison or, kill somebody or whatever, or get hurt myself, I might as well go out there and just get, the lowest salary, and I can live with that, and I'll live within those means. And those are the type of decisions a lot of people are doing, especially the new generation, I would think. Okay, so why bother working? Yeah, and so I think this is a quite widespread mentality, and I'm not sure I can blame them completely. Again, if and then you have people in the country versus people in the cities. People in the country, a lot of people say, these guys in the cities, they don't want to work. And yeah, if you have a ranch out there or some land, and you say, look, I work every day, I plow, I take my shovel, I do this, I do that. Yeah, if you have land to work on, you might do that. But if you're in the city and live in a little apartment, you don't have many choices available to you. It's either, what UBI or get a job for a little more than what you get from UBI, which may not be worth it to you. Another issue that a lot of people raised, several of them in fact, is this notion that people have that everything's a cycle. History repeats itself. And I guess we repeat history because we make the same mistakes. It's like we didn't learn from the past. We don't read history or whatever. And so our politicians, everybody just repeats many of the errors of the past. And that's why history repeats itself. We never learn our lesson. That kind of thought. And that a lot of things are cycles, like the curves. If you look at economics, if you look at population, etc., they go up and down, and people are so used to it. We have booms and crashes, etc. So this is what people have in the back of their minds. So when I talk to them about extinction and say, look, that's a one-way street, they say, no, Bill, it always goes up and down. So it never goes all the way down to extinction. At some point, it comes back up. They don't know how, they don't know when, but they know it's happened throughout history and it'll always happen that way till the end of eternity. Okay, that's the way to look at it. And so here's one fellow, and he says the following, if I can get him up here. Says people don't like working now because they can get away with it. They can get away with it. So if society collapses and a couple of billion people die of starvation, the others are not going to keep watching YouTube. So we get rid of the people who don't work, and those that are working, they don't have to worry. They say good riddance, right? That's more or less where he's coming from. They will be forced back into farming and raising livestock. We're going back to agriculture? Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think we're going back to agriculture. We're certainly not going to back to manufacturing, and I doubt very much we're going back to hunter-gathering. Even assuming we did, here you have 8 billion people almost, and what would we be hunting? I mean, there's not enough animals out there that we can kill. Even by raising like cattle and so on, we have more population than all of these almost put together. Maybe not chickens, but yeah, the bigger animals like cows and pigs, we're more than them. And the reason we don't need more of them is that we don't eat, that much meat on the planet, right? We don't eat as much meat as we should, or we could, let's put it that way. In other words, if we had 8 billion people, you would think we would need at least 8 billion cows or maybe even more. And I don't think there's that many. I think we have fewer cows than humans. Just an example. Okay, that can't compete with a production rate of industrial agriculture. Exactly. So at least there's no incentive to move into the farm as a single farmer with its tractors and chemical fertilizer. Okay, so another couple billion die. So the population goes down a few billion. The situation stabilizes and human life continues on. Like, no problem. We lost 1 billion people, 2 billion, 3 billion. Good riddance. People are not going to just choose to starve to death. Yeah, people don't choose to starve to death. I mean, if you want to kill yourself, there are better ways. You can hang yourself. You can take a little pill, throw yourself over the bridge. Maybe ask your friend if he can put the gun to your head or whatever. There are better ways of dying than starving to death, right? But the point here is that it's not a question of choice. It's a question of if you're forced to starve to death. Okay, and that's what we're saying that's going to happen in the case of extinction. There will be no food. Now, how's that for being forced not to eat? If there's no food, I'm sorry, you will starve. Okay, another fellow also, all these people who believe in cycles, that everything just continues on as always, it's just an up and down. And this fellow says, the farm will continue long after we're all individually forgotten, or perhaps deliberately erased. Yeah, maybe in a dilapidated farm, I don't know. Here you have this. This is what I think is going to happen after the farms are gone, after society collapses, the global economy collapses. Survivalist without a cause is just a, caveman. He's just a Neanderthal. That's all he is. And there won't be much to hunt. And the prepper, all these people who prepare for whatever they're preparing, without a cause is just a gardener. You need to have a cause. You have to understand what you're preparing for. Are you preparing for just a little blip, some accident that happened of nature, one of God's acts of God? Or are you preparing for the end of man, the end of the world, as we call it? And yeah, there you have a survivalist after a global collapse. That's what he's going to look like. And a prepper after the global collapse. That's what he's going to look like. And the only way they can survive is if they live in some kind of community, family or several families or whatever. Alone, you will not survive. Aside from the fact that you may not want to survive alone because, you won't have any doctors. You'll be quite lonely. You'll probably go nuts, pondering, what happened to humanity. There's a lot of problems with being a lonely hermit. Okay, and so you got to think about all these things. Okay, and so here's what I think will happen at least immediately after the economic collapse. Those who want to be farmers, they're going to be farmers by day and soldiers by night. It's what the Greeks called hoplites. You had to do both jobs. You were soldier and farmer. Okay, there's no such thing as not having protection. You need protection. I think Al Capone said that. You need protection. Okay, so don't tell me you don't need protection. Yeah, you're going to need protection from your neighbors. If you're, I don't know, in the middle of Kansas, you won't need to worry about the Russians. You'll have to worry about the guy next door to you or the people in the cities who want to share in your bounty. So you don't have to worry about Chinese or Russians at that point. Okay, the enemy will be within. Okay, here's another fellow who talks about up and downs, cycles. Says Several states, mentions, right? He says, are approaching a point where more people are unemployment welfare than who are working. This is unsustainable. Exactly. Like all other Marxist socialist schemes of the past failed, so too will this one fail. Okay? And then women will naturally return to the kitchen. I think my wife would like to talk to this fellow one-on-one, face-to-face. And I wouldn't recommend that he go there because he's going to go in there with a gun. Anyways, taxing income directly has taken the women out of the family structure. Also, women liberation, a government scheme to get the woman out of the house, and paying income tax took her out of the family structure. It is all tied to a natural cycle, up and down, and up and down. Okay, so he thinks that this is just a cycle of up and down, and we'll return to the good old days. Okay, we're going to return to the good old days where, women go where they belong, in the kitchen. And men will go out, I don't know, hunting, killing, and soldiering. I don't know. This guy's out of tune with the times. Okay, we live in times of Me Too. We live in times of pronouns. And, I've seen changes. I'm from the 50s. So, I've seen quite a few changes. Do I like them all? No, of course not. There's a lot of stuff I don't like. I just have to accept the reality. And these people are not willing to accept the reality. They want to return back to the good old days. I don't know, maybe to the days of Charleston and, Rag, who knows? They have to really confront the reality and the fact that I doubt very much we're going back, especially to hunter-gathering. I cannot imagine that at all. Okay, that would be, a different planet maybe. Okay, so fellow says, I think the same fellow, the monetary system is crashing. Yes, correct. Out of its ashes, we will create a new system, just like has happened in the past. Again, they think all this is just repeating, right? Cycles. No monetary system has lasted forever. It is also tied to a cycle of birth, growth, and peak and death. Here you have the phoenix bird coming out of the ashes. They think it's just recycling everything. Everything's a cycle. Okay, and that we will repeat the past. History repeats itself. We made mistakes. We correct the mistakes, and that means we go down, then we come back up. This is what they have in their heads. They think somehow we're going to the past. Okay, and here's the same fellow says, population follows a cycle that goes up and down, up and down, up and down. Your problem is that you are thinking linearly rather than cyclically, okay? The population growth cycle is over. We are in decline and will continue in decline into 2039. I guess he's got a clear crystal ball there, okay? However, the cycle will change again then. Nothing goes up and down in a straight line. Well, there you have an up and down. It goes pretty much in a straight line, around a median, whatever you want to call it. I think this guy's been on the seesaw for too long. Okay, these fellows really think that everything just repeats itself, history repeats itself, and they think nothing's going to change in the long run, meaning there's going to be downs and we're going to be in a sorry state. Maybe we get into a recession, even in a depression, but we'll come out of it and we'll go back up. They don't know how, they don't know what's coming, they don't know what's going. Needs to come after that, right? But it's always going to be a cycle. We will never become extinct. The thing goes on forever. Okay? And so same fellow says the following. We have entered a climate cooling cycle because someone asked him, what's going to bring the population back up? He says populations always decline during these cooling cycles. Empires end as well. So we will see an end to the Western Empire. It remains to be seen whether we enter into an ice age sometime in the 2040s. I believe we will begin warming again. There's going to be a warm cycle. Maybe all that climate change, right? If we do, then we will see population going up again. However, many believe there is a 12,000-year cycle and we may enter a glacial period. So this for some reason thinks that after the 2040s, somehow maybe the warmth comes back. And I guess people will start procreating again. There's no mention of genetic diversity, the fact that humans have very little genetic diversity. And if a lot of people die, whatever's left will have less genetic diversity. The gene pool will be smaller. And if we're all in these pockets, 10 people here, 100 maybe over there at most, and that'll be the seed, the people who restart the race. So they're already going to start, not as we started out 200,000 years ago with lots of genetic diversity. We're going to start now with almost no genetic diversity from that seed, okay? And whoever comes out of there, 2, 3 generations later, will be autistic, homosexual, who knows what. Okay, I don't think we're going to have good, solid genes 2, 3, 4 generations from there on. Okay, so even if pockets survive on planet Earth, whatever comes out of those pockets is not going to be good. That's assuming they decide to procreate, which is a more important, more basic issue. Of course, they won't decide to procreate. They're just going to live out their lives. If they survived the whole collapse of humanity, they're not going to be procreating. The last thing on their mind, that's going to be another mouth to feed. Why would they procreate another kid in a small community so that he marries the girl across the street and now we have another Adam and Eve situation? No, that's the end of man. Okay, be realistic at least, use your brain a little bit. Okay, so no, we will not be procreating after 2040, especially if we have a collapse of the global economy and billions of people die. Same fellow says, we are looking at the extinction of our current forms of government and empire, the republic. 300 years ago, the monarchies went extinct, replaced by republics. Okay, I guess he's talking to the French Revolution, about the French Revolution, right? Today, the republics will go extinct to be replaced by real direct democracies. Okay, yeah, all I can tell him is, been there, done that. When I was 15 years old, I got into communism. That's how early. I was already into politics, reading newspapers, books, etc. And it took 21 years until I was about 36. That's when I started to change my mind. Yeah, communism, anarchism, whatever you want to call it, they're all the same, really. They all want this freedom from government. They say government is only for the rich, and we want a government that's for all of humanity, that sort of thing. And we've never had that. At least since we've created cities, civilization, we've never had that. And so history does not repeat itself in the sense that we never changed that. We've always had the same thing. Even when communists and revolutionaries took over, you just replace one king with another king. They had different names. Maybe you call them republics or whatever. It's always been the same. The new people, they became rich. They began to control the means of production, and the rest of the people never made it out of where they were. That's how it was always. Okay? So this notion that somehow we're going to have this anarcho-capitalism that these people talk about today. These are the modern communists. That's all they are. Don't call them communists because they get upset. They're capitalists, but they want to trade without the interference of government. Yeah, but the money they're going to be using is, from the government. And they have a lot of theories about that. But yeah, I can't even begin to analyze that. Okay, yeah, there won't be a world government or no government whatsoever. In fact, that was communism. That was the original idea. The idea was all these anarchists and communists, socialists, whatever you want to call them, of the 19th century. That's what they wanted. They wanted eventually to get rid of government, but first they needed to get a hold of the means of production through revolution. So you had all these people. They wanted to overthrow the governments. What? So they could take over the governments, and then take it on its proper course, which is to the benefit of the worker. And at some point they would decide, well, we don't need government at all. We finally can, everybody can rule themselves, and we don't need government. We don't need someone to tell us what to do, or who to trade with, or what to do in our everyday lives, etc. And not only that, never happened. It will never happen. Okay? Extinction will reach much faster and much easier than that. Okay? So yeah, I have abandoned all those thoughts. Fortunately, I woke up a little late. That's life. Okay, and so this fellow thinks that, okay, who's going to take over? The Chinese, of course, because Western civilization will crumble, right? So he says, yes, China's slowing down. However, China will turn her production to selling to her own people. You got, 1.2 billion people? And she will become the new financial center post, 2032. Boy, I wish I had a crystal ball. He's got all these dates. 2032, this will happen. 2040, 2039, this other stuff. 2040, the other. Good. Women, after 2040, women will go back to the kitchen. When the final embers of the Western Empire snuff out from the current crash and burn. What can I say? If Mr. Xi, Premier of China, believes that China is going to go back to the glorious days of Genghis Khan, I think he's drank too much. Okay? I think he's got too many pink elephants rolling around his head. Okay? No, it's never going to happen. At least I doubt it very, very much. Okay? I don't know how China will get up there. You might say, well, it's growing. Look how much it's grown in the last 50 years. Yeah. And here are the real values now. And you should look at the macro trends before you open your mouth. Okay, here it is. This is China's birth rate. It's been falling since the 1980s, even after the one-child per family policy was removed. It's still going down. In fact, they don't need to do anything about losing people growth rate, coming down, because as soon as people move to the cities, that's the end of population growth rate to any country. It's called density dependent birth rates, and China is in that mode right now. There's no way China can overturn that anymore. The only way you could probably do it is creating a new city in the middle of nowhere. And for that, you would have to create some incentive for example, the new population, new generations to move there and build a city out of nothing in the middle of the desert. The era of colonization is over. We're going to make the existing cities bigger. The towns will turn into cities, the cities into megalopolis, and so on. But we're not going to found new towns, okay? Because for that, it would have to be like in the Wild West. You go out there, why? Because something drives you there. In this case, it was gold or land or whatever. But that era is gone. That was the 19th century in the United States. China also went through a period like that, and that's over now. There won't be any new cities on the planet. Maybe one somewhere, I don't know, for some reason. In general, there won't be any new cities. I mean, we should be populating new cities everywhere. Russia, among others. What is it? Their population is dropping day by day. Are they founding new cities? Will that stimulate population growth? It would if they could create a new city. Now everybody flocks to the big cities. That's what's happening. It's the other way around. We're making the big cities bigger and the towns into cities and the villages into towns. That's what we're doing everywhere. And so this is another chart. China's GDP growth rate by decade. You can see how it's gone. Since the 2000s, it's been going down, the growth rate. And so China's trend is to go down. And China will become like any other country that industrialized and eventually, turned the corner and its growth rate came down. There's no way China can grow forever at 25% like it was growing like shortly after the days of Mao Zedong. Okay, and here's the GDP breakdown, which I showed the other day. Again, services has surpassed manufacturing. It has surpassed industry. I think it was 2014, 2015, thereabouts. That was like 6-7 years ago. And now its services are even growing more than industry. So China's becoming a service economy. When it does, its growth rate will come down. Okay, there's no way it can continue growing at big percentages. China has its days counted on the almanac. Okay, another fellow says along the same line, that's a myth that we're overpopulated. Only 2.7% of the world is populated with cities. We have a large amount of land left on Earth. Yeah, and again, it doesn't mean that we're going to colonize those empty lands, those deserts, those ice boxes, icebergs in the middle, in the North Pole or in Antarctica. We're not going to flock to empty lands. There has to be an incentive for that, and for that, we don't need new lands. What we need is jobs, and if we could create new cities, we would be creating new jobs, and either one or the other is going to happen. The problem is that we're packed into these cities to make it seem like we're compacted. Correct. Everybody flocks to the cities, not the other way around. Nobody leaves the cities to go in the middle of nowhere, except if you have some income, you bought a house in in the outskirts, and you say, well, I don't want the hustle and bustle of the cities. That is happening. A lot of people are moving out of the big cities. They're you could say middle class and up, not the poor people. The poor people flock to the cities, and they're going to end up eventually in the cities, living on welfare, collecting the basic income, universal basic income. The truth is that the whole world's population can fit into Texas, okay? 65% of the earth has remained unexplored. Yeah, well, that's not true. We have satellites, I don't know if you knew about that, but there's not a single part of the earth that we haven't looked at through the satellites, and there are no lost tribes. None of that. That's a myth. People like to talk about lost tribes. Oh, we found a new tribe. No. That doesn't happen. We know every tribe that's been on the planet. That is on the planet. 65% remain unexplored. Okay, 20 to 40% of the Earth's surface has not been affected by significant human activity. Yeah, and again, it won't. We don't need it, because the only way you can get that activity in there is if it's justified. And justified means economically. Otherwise, nobody goes there. In the end, there will be a cleansing of the horrible humans, and we will be able to live in a utopian society. I like that. So I'm asking, will you be part of the cleansed or the utopian group? People are so sick of government That's what's happening. They're so sick of government. They're so sick of politicians. Okay. And well, let me say something about this. What this fellow said here. Let me just add this. And that's he's right about world population. Um, you know, fitting into Texas. But what he should know is that the growth rate is coming down, and there's nothing we can do about it. Okay, so this notion that this other fellow had that after 2040 population is going to explode because the heat is coming back and et cetera, et cetera. No, it's not going to happen. We're just going to go down, down, down all the way to zero population growth, ZPG, and that's going to be sometime around mid-century. That's the calculation today if everything goes as it is going today. I doubt we will even reach ZPG in 2050. I think something will happen even before then. But yeah, population will go down, and there's nothing we can do about changing that trend. And the reason we can't change that trend is we're moving to the cities, and in cities we don't have kids. So I don't care if you live in Palestine or in China or in India or the United States or Canada or Australia, there won't be any more kids. Especially the girls today, they don't want to have kids, aside from the fact that they live in cities. Everybody's concerned about their careers. That's more important than having kids. Kids are postponed till 30, 40, 50 years old, and then they come out wrong anyways. So there's very little chance that population is going to explode back again. Okay, last time we had high birth rate, the highest birth rate was in 1963. That was what, 60 years ago almost, and it was at 2.3. And since it's dropped, today we're at 1, and it's going to continue dropping until we get to 0. There's going to be one person's born, one person dies. And then I think we're going to go into negative growth, just like China, Russia and Japan are in negative growth. All of Europe, Western Europe at least, is in negative growth, population growth. The only reason they can more or less maintain their population going is because they have immigration. That's the only reason. Russia can't do it and Japan can't do it because they don't have immigration. That's their problem. And they might change their rules there as well, because if they need to expand, they're gonna need to bring people from the outside. That means they're gonna have to open their borders. Okay, and that means cultural changes, fighting, racism, all that kind of good stuff. Okay, so fellow says regarding genetic diversity, I said the other day that humans have very little genetic diversity. Says where are all the actual studies about this inbreeding? Because we have almost no genetic diversity among humans. And here was let me show you the one of the articles out there. You can look it up and you'll find more of them. But this is the article. Chimpanzee populations living in relatively close proximity are substantially more different genetically than humans living on different continents, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That was the report that came out in 2012. There were a couple studies, in fact, and they showed that humans have very little genetic diversity. What does that mean? It means we're all clones of each other. If you look at your genetic code, your DNA, and you compare it against someone else, there's not that much difference compared to other animals, So it's a comparison kind of thing. We have relatively little genetic diversity, much like the cheetahs. Cheetahs, not the monkey, not Tarzan's cheetah, but the cheetahs, the fast animal, almost no genetic diversity. And they're all clones. So, and we're kind of like that. We're not as bad as the cheetahs, but we're getting there. Okay, and why? Because of inbreeding. So this fellow says, where are some studies? And all I can tell him is that there are no studies. I'm the guy who proposes that. Okay, I put that in my book, how the Neanderthals disappeared, and I've got this chart there. And what I'm saying is, mutation rate does not change, is overruled, is overcome by the fact that we inbreed, and then we have also all these crashes. Eventually, right? Bottlenecks, founder effects, and so on. So, I'm the guy proposing that theory. As far as I'm concerned, no geneticist on planet Earth even discovered it or even imagined it. I don't think anyone who does genetics even came across that idea, the fact that we've been inbreeding for 200, 300,000 years, and because of that, we lost our genetic diversity. That's the cause. That's the primary cause. And people say, well, we create, mutations every day. New variations. Those are overcome again or in the past they were overcome by crashes, population crashes. But just as much as we create, we destroy by inbreeding. So this notion that people say mutations take us in a better direction, it's not. At least I don't subscribe to that, and I can give you my 5 cents peace of mind. Okay? Take it for what it is. Okay, and fellow says, the belief that man controls the Earth's thermostat is a religion. I can't say controls, Okay, I would use that word. I'm saying that we do affect climate in many ways by the crops we grow, by the fact that we do slash and burn, we throw coal up in the air, we also breathe. We're 8 billion people breathing. All that has to have some effect on the environment at whatever scale. That's up to people to measure that stuff and determine exactly how much we're affecting the environment. What I think is happening is that we always have climate change. We always affect the climate. Every animal that's been on planet Earth, every plant that's been on Earth, even one plant, one animal affects the environment. As soon as you breathe, as soon as you consume air and push out CO2 and so on, you're affecting the environment. A small amount, but if you multiply that times many, many trees, many plants, many animals, that's got to have some kind of effect on the atmosphere. Not to mention, natural things like volcanoes and plumes coming out of, the waters and so on. So there's a lot of activity, and you have these carbon and nitrogen cycles and so on. That changes. My issue is not whether we can control, which is the word this fellow used, control the environment. I'm not saying we control it, but we do affect it to some degree. My issue with climate change is it has no bearing whatsoever on anything. All those people talking about climate change, they're spinning their wheels. Okay, we got bigger fires here, and the big fire is our economy is at a dead end. It will be at a dead end quite soon. And that's what we got to take care of, and I don't think we can do anything about it. That's my position on that. But that's much more important than talking about climate change. Climate change, even if it affects 1-2%, 1-2 degrees or percent, whatever, per century, changes up or down, colder or hotter, and it melts some ice and some animals die, that's not going to kill us. So don't worry about climate change. Okay, it's nonsense. Now, it's good for politicians because they say, hey, we can create some new jobs with this stuff. And, if we force everybody to think about climate change, we can create industries that cater to the climate change world and, create new technology, put people to work. That's what it's got to do with. It's got nothing to do with the environment per se, in the sense that the environment's going to kill us. That's what I'm saying. Okay, I'm saying it's got no bearing on extinction, which I think is right up ahead. That's where we're headed. We're going to hit a brick wall. Okay, fellow says, gives us an idea what money is. I think he did a good job, pretty much, so I'm going to put this up there. It says, money is created through production. Yeah, I guess you could call it value, as a lot of the anarcho-capitalists like to use that word, value. How much value does it have, Money is a measure of production. Okay, money itself has no value except as a medium of exchange. So far, so good, everything. I cannot produce everything, correct. So someone I am bartering with may not want what I have produced, and vice versa, right. As long as there is someone producing something, there will be money. Yeah, maybe. You can produce something for yourself without exchange, but if you produce it with the purpose of exchanging, hopefully the other guy has something to exchange with you. The issue is that when the whole world collapses, when the economy of the world collapses, the only thing of value will be food. And food you don't exchange, and therefore that's the end of money anyways. In fact, it'll be the end of bartering. No kind of exchange will take place. No trade will take place, because the only thing of value is food. Food you don't trade. No hunter-gatherer exchanges food. But some people do believe that today. You have all these paleontologists, they talk about Neanderthals using money, seashells and whatever, like John Hawkes. My God. Okay, and so here it is. These are some of the quotes that some famous people put up there, and someone sent it to me, and so I thought I'd put it up here. This is one fellow, and it doesn't matter who said it, just keep your eye on what they said. If all money becomes worthless, then so does all government and all society and all standards. Another fellow says, under conditions of famine, it was the farmers, amazingly enough, who were the first to suffer, often flocking to cities that held stores of grain. What were they looking for? Food. And another fellow, this is von Mises, if inflation is not eliminated very soon, all our technological and scientific improvements will not prevent us from a tremendous financial catastrophe that will destroy practically all that civilization has created in the last several hundred years. In talking about inflation, we should not forget that there is the danger that depriving the masses of their savings will make them desperate. Okay? So yeah, these are some quotes out there, people who in the past kind of saw something was not right, and they're just trying to give you a word of caution of, kind of a conclusion that they reached on the issue of money. So yeah, all I can tell you is money is very important. And I'll give you an example here. And this comes from the Civil War. There was a series created by Ken Burns a few years ago, a couple of decades ago, in fact. And, you had General Sherman. He just went from Atlanta all the way to Savannah. And he just destroyed everything in his path. He said, war is hell, and he said, I don't think I'll get the Southern people to love me, to like me. The women hate my guts in the South, right? They hate my guts. And I'm not going to convince them. I'm not going to change their minds because they were born with all this. What I'm going to do is make life so miserable that they'll think again ever if they ever want to solve things through war. Don't engage in war with me, he said, because I'm going to make life very, very miserable for you. And so he went down from Atlanta all the way to Savannah and just wiped out everything. And, then he went up north a little bit and finally defeated, was it Johnston, I think, and who surrendered, and while he was going, he was destroying everything, especially Savannah. He did a worse job in Savannah than he did in Atlanta, which he burned, and took everything of value, destroyed everything else. He did something similar to Savannah and just bombed every house because that's where the Civil War essentially started, or what they call the betrayal started. And so some people were suffering a lot. What were they suffering of? Were they suffering because, they didn't have their computers or because their houses were destroyed? Absolutely not. And let this lady, her name was Mary Chestnut in Ken Burns' documentary, and this is what she had to say. Listen to her, because she tells you something about money. Okay, so those of you who think that money is forever and money never will lose and people will always accept money, listen please to Mary Chestnut. This is what she had to say. Listen carefully.
We dread starvation far more than we do Grant or Sherman. Famine, that is the word now. I daily part with my raiment for food. We find no one who will exchange eatables for Confederate money, so we are devouring our clothes.
Did you learn something? Nobody would accept her money. Money was not an issue. I can't use that money. I don't want it anymore. I want food. That was what was undermined after Sherman went through there and destroyed everything. And that's more or less what you got to look forward to when the global economy collapses, meaning money will be no more. Okay? Not a prediction. It's got nothing to do with prediction. Okay? I'm not giving you a date or anything like that. I'm saying that all mass extinctions happen because the economy collapses to any animal. All animals have economics. All animals manage resources. The primary resource that any animal on the planet, including us, manage is food. All the rest is nonsense, poppycock. We don't need it. We don't need houses. We don't need beds. We don't need any of that. What we need is food. Then you live one more day. Okay, so one fellow says, does extinction to you mean that there will be no human left on Earth? Yeah, exactly. Extinction means when the last human dies. Okay, they have all these movies like I'm Legend and Waterworld and so on, and they have lots of these. First of all, it's interesting that we have so many of these movies in the last couple decades. It's like people have this sixth sense that something's not right. That's one issue. That's, I think, why they become so popular. But then in all these movies, it never ends in extinction. It always ends with a woman having a baby, and they say, "Oh, hope." Not here. I want to make sure I give you no hope whatsoever. Okay? And people say, "Bill, you're so pessimistic. What a pessimist." No, I'm not a pessimist. I drink beer, I drink wine, and I don't drink it because, I'm pessimistic. I don't drink it to get drunk. I drink it because I like it. I don't get drunk. But aside from that, I'm realistic. I'm trying to tell you what's coming up. Okay? And all you can do is get used to it. Okay? Or maybe adjust your life in such a way that you factor it in there. Maybe you're in your 20s and you believe that you're going to get Social Security someday. All I can tell you is think again. So you're contributing to a fund from which you will never get a penny out of. Okay, that's one issue. But the other issue is that maybe you got to make new plans. Okay, for your future. And another fellow says, finally, he says, if we really work at it, we might be able to take all life with us. Okay, and here you see what you can call part of the sixth mass extinction, okay, which a lot of people say we're undergoing right now. All these animals have died. You can get the percentages and so on there of a lot of these animals that have disappeared in the last few hundred years. Okay, and what can I tell you? Yeah, we're in the midst of a mass extinction. That's on the one hand. Some people say we crowded a lot of these animals out. Others say we overhunted them. Whatever the case, I'm saying a lot of them died because they were simply old species. So they died on their own without human intervention whatsoever. Maybe we aided in some way by crowding them out. Yeah, that could have happened. But primarily they died because they were old species. And I think we're already in the sixth mass extinction for hundreds of years probably. But when we go, we're going to probably wipe out every mammal, anything that walks on land at least. I think it'll be wiped out. All bears, all lions, all cows, all birds, maybe a lot of fish. I think we're going to wipe out a lot of the living entities out there because we're going to try to survive. We're going to kill anything that's walking out there, including other humans. So yeah, we're going to take everyone with us, especially the mammals. This is the end, not only of man, but also the mammals. Just like the dinosaurs went away, the mammals will go away in this instance as well. Let me say the following, for those of you who are not familiar with my extinction theory. Someone comes to you and says, will humans ever become extinct? And you might answer, say, well, yeah, I mean, the universe might become extinct. Matter, according to relativity, right, is expanding. The universe is expanding. It's becoming less dense as time goes by, thinner and thinner. This debris that's out there floating in space. And yeah, probably humans will die somewhere in those days, unless they come up with something new and say we wormhole to another universe. They might even come up with that. But that's trillions of years, quadrillions of years down the road. I don't have to worry about it. Okay. Well, you know that the sun is about to expire, blow up, maybe in 100, 200, 300 million years, depending on who you listen to, depending on calculations. Well, yeah, but still, I don't think I have to worry because, again, that's millions of years down the road. Well, how about climate change? That might happen within the next 1,000 years, and we might have all these catastrophes on Earth, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, I mean, if it happens anything above 100 years, I don't think I'm worried too much because it won't affect me. I'm sorry it'll affect my great-great-grandkids, but not me, and I'm sorry for them. And now, how about if I say that maybe in the next 10 or 20 years, we will become extinct? And now it's getting closer to home, and now you might wonder, well, what do you mean? How fast, what could happen in the next 10, 20 years that will kill me? I mean, we've already ruled out the sun, we ruled out, climate change, what is it, peak oil, disease, an asteroid, what's going to kill us? And that's why we need, as I say, we need to determine what causes a mass extinction. What is the cause? Because we're talking about theory here, we're talking about a mechanism, we're not talking about dates. We're not saying it's going to happen on the 1st of July of, I don't know, the year 2035. We're not saying that. We're saying, look at the mechanism, and based on that, you can get an intuitive feeling of how much time we really have left. And what do we look at? Well, we look at, first, how did the animals in the past die? Did the dinosaurs die because of an asteroid strike, or did they die of something else? That's one issue. The other one is, let's assume we figure out what they died of. Are humans capable of overcoming that same issue, that same mechanism, that same agent, with all the technology, with all the knowledge we have, all the foresight that we have the ability to look into the future and calculate and imagine and say, perhaps, that, I hope I'm still online because I get a message there from YouTube. Let me know otherwise. Anyways, what is the cause? If we figure out the cause and we figure out that we can't do anything about that same agent, that same cause, that same mechanism, then we figured out, what's going to kill us. And if we can figure out, how soon that mechanism will occur, we can look ahead. Maybe we can have an estimate of when we really think we're going to die, when the last human will, succumb to whatever, will die. And so I think it's important for all people to look at those that are interested in the subject, because if you figure that out, that we won't live thousands of years, hundreds of years, we may have only a couple decades at most left in our lives, well, maybe it changes your way of thinking. Maybe today you were thinking about, oh, I'm not going to throw this gum that I have on the floor because that's going to mess up the environment. So I got to take care of the environment because, it's not right to do that. But if you know the world is going to end in 10 or 20 years, or you reach that conclusion, well, maybe you don't care anymore. And you say, well, what the hell? I'm going to throw this gum on anywhere because that's not important at all anymore. And if I'm not going to collect Social Security, I better make some other plans. And so, your mind changes if you know you've only got 10, 20 years to live. It's like that movie, The Bucket List. I think it was Jack Nicholson. And, these two old folks, they had only a few months to live. That's what they were told by their doctors. And they said, well, what is that we want to do? And how they created a bucket list, right? In the last few moments of our lives. And I think you'll be thinking in those terms if you think extinction is going to happen.